The train station pulsed like a restless heart. Screens flickered with delays, announcements echoed above hurried footsteps, and 100 lives brushed against each other without ever colliding. Yet she stood still, anchored in silence, as if her entire body refused to join the rhythm of strangers rushing past. Her fingers clutched a small suitcase, the handle worn smooth as though it had absorbed years of quiet waiting. Tied to it was a red scarf, frayed at the edges, dancing in the gusts that sneaked through the open doors. Its sudden flutter caught her hair, brushing strands across her face, but she didn't move to fix it. Her gaze was fixed elsewhere. She watched them. 2 figures across the platform, laughing, leaning into each other as though the world belonged only to them. The woman's hand rested lightly on the man's arm, and the man leaned down, whispering something that drew a soft smile from her lips. The sight carved something sharp in her chest, but her expression remained unreadable. No tears. No words. Just a steady, burning stillness. Her knuckles tightened around the suitcase handle until her skin whitened. She breathed in shallowly, as though holding herself together by sheer will. The scarf tugged again in the wind, snapping against her wrist. A memory flickered, the same scarf once wrapped around her neck on a night colder than this one, placed there by hands that promised warmth but delivered betrayal instead. She blinked hard, as if the present might dissolve back into that moment. It didn't. A voice over the intercom broke the silence. Train 07, departing in 5 minutes. She shifted slightly, enough for the light above to catch in her eyes. Not watery, but sharp. A storm contained. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a cracked silver watch. The glass face was splintered, its hands frozen at 3:17. She stared at it for a heartbeat too long, thumb grazing the jagged surface until a thin line of red bloomed across her skin. She didn't flinch. "Third wheel," she whispered under her breath, barely audible, yet heavy as if the word itself was a bruise. The couple across the platform moved closer, their laughter louder now, careless in its brightness. She tilted her head, studying them like one might study a painting before setting it on fire. The scarf twisted around her wrist, the cracked watch pressed into her palm, and her breath lingered between shallow and sharp. She stepped closer to the edge of the platform, suitcase rolling softly beside her. Not for the train. Not yet. Her lips curved, not in a smile, but in something far more dangerous. The announcement blared again. The wind rose. The scarf danced like flame. And in her silence, a plan pulsed. The suitcase trembled slightly where it stood, though her hand was steady. She had carried it for years, through apartments that never felt like home, jobs that drained her spirit, and nights where silence pressed harder than hunger. Once, long ago, the suitcase had been bright, a gift from her father on her 15th birthday. "Travel light, but travel with purpose," he'd said, ruffling her hair as if she could carry his words forever. The corners of the case were scuffed now, its zipper stubborn, but it had outlasted him. It had outlasted everyone. She bent briefly, brushing her hand over the red scarf knotted to the handle. It wasn't just cloth. It was a reminder of a winter night when she was the uninvited guest, sitting in the back of a car as 2 people who swore they loved her laughed like she was invisible. The scarf had slipped from her neck that night, caught in the door. He had picked it up, not to return it, but to tie it around her wrist instead. A careless gesture. A declaration. That was when the word began. Third wheel. Her lips pressed together as the memory burned hot. She swallowed it back, looking away. On the opposite platform, passengers rushed into embraces, their arms locking tightly after days, months apart. Children squealed as fathers hoisted them into the air. Lovers kissed without shame, blocking the way for others. Her throat tightened. She shifted her gaze quickly, almost defensively, and realized she had no one waiting. No one rushing forward. Her reflection in the glass pane looked back at her, tired eyes, windswept hair, lips bitten raw. She almost didn't recognize herself. A movement at the corner of her vision made her tense. A man stood a few feet away, not boarding, not leaving. Just watching. His gaze wasn't invasive, not sharp or lingering like most. It was deliberate silence, the kind that seemed to say I see you, even if you don't want me to. For a second, their eyes met. Hers darted away instantly, pulse quickening, fingers tightening around the cracked watch in her palm until it dug into her skin. Why was he standing there? Why did it feel like he knew something? The announcement echoed again, Train 07, delayed for 10 minutes. Groans filled the air as passengers shuffled, checked their phones, cursed under their breath. She stayed still. The scarf tugged again, brushing against her wrist like it had a will of its own. She looked once more across the platform. The couple was gone. Just like that. Their laughter stolen by the crowd. Her breath caught in her throat, and an unexpected pang of disappointment bloomed, not because they'd left, but because her resolve suddenly wavered without their presence to sharpen it. She lifted the suitcase slightly, taking one step forward. Then stopped. Behind her, she heard quiet footsteps, measured, unhurried, drawing closer. She turned her head just enough to see the stranger still there. His mouth shifted into something between a smile and a question, as though he was about to speak, then didn't. For the first time, her hand trembled. The first raindrops tapped against the glass panes of the station roof, faint at first, then steady, like fingers drumming on hollow wood. People groaned, shifting closer together under the shelter. The air thickened, damp with the scent of wet concrete. She stayed where she was, suitcase at her side, scarf snapping like it wanted to leave her wrist. The stranger didn't move either. He was close enough now that she could make out the small things, the frayed laces of his shoes, the crease in his jacket sleeve where it had been mended by hand, and the edge of a photograph peeking from his wallet when he shifted slightly. She couldn't see the face in it, only the corner of a smile, blurred and worn from being touched too often. Something in her chest tightened. She looked away quickly, pretending not to notice. Yet his silence pressed against hers like a mirror. She didn't like it, but she couldn't step back either. The storm outside deepened. Thunder rolled, echoing like a warning. She felt it inside her ribs. Her father's voice returned, faint, almost cruel now, travel with purpose. But what was her purpose anymore? Revenge? Proving she wasn't invisible? Or just surviving? She closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the rain hammer harder, drowning out the chatter of strangers. She thought of the couple, their easy laughter, the way they had brushed her existence aside, reducing her to a shadow at the edge of their story. The word again clawed at her, third wheel. When she opened her eyes, the stranger was still there. He wasn't smiling anymore. His gaze flickered once to her suitcase, then to the scarf. His jaw tightened slightly, as though he recognized something he shouldn't. Her heart stuttered. Does he know? She shifted her weight, every instinct screaming to leave, to step into the rain, vanish into the crowd, disappear before this silence turned into something dangerous. But her legs didn't move. Instead, she studied him the way she had studied the couple, carefully, guarded. His shoes. His jacket. The photograph. Little fragments of a life she didn't know, but somehow felt in her bones. She wondered if he too stood in stations alone, waiting for people who never came. She wondered if someone had once called him the outsider, the forgotten one. The thunder cracked again, closer this time. The scarf lashed against her wrist. She tightened her grip on the suitcase until her hand ached. Finally, he spoke, not a greeting, not even a question. Just a quiet line, almost lost under the storm. You're not staying for the train. Her breath caught. The air between them held too many possibilities, fate, danger, recognition. She couldn't decide which. And so she said nothing. The rain poured harder. The silence waited. The storm swallowed the station whole. Rain hammered the roof so violently it felt like the sky itself was trying to break through. The loudspeaker crackled with updates, none of them clear, all of them lost beneath the noise of rushing footsteps and umbrellas snapping open. She stood frozen, suitcase at her side, scarf wound around her wrist like a fragile shackle. For a fleeting moment, she considered walking, just turning her back, dragging the bag into the storm, letting the downpour erase her entirely. Her knees bent slightly, body shifting forward. She almost did it. Almost. But something inside her spine locked. She turned, just once, for one last look. The stranger hadn't moved. He stood where the shadow of the roof ended, rain streaking across his shoulders, soaking the worn fabric of his jacket. In his hand, dangling carelessly, was the scarf. Her breath cut short. She reached instinctively to her wrist, only to find it bare. She hadn't even felt him take it. For a second, she wanted to shout, to accuse him, to demand it back. But the words tangled in her throat. He didn't clutch the scarf with possession, not with triumph. He held it the way one holds something fragile, something that doesn't belong to them but still deserves care. Their eyes met, and something in his expression pierced through her guard. Not pity. Not judgment. Something else. A knowing. A woman passing by whispered sharply to her husband, just loud enough, "She looks lost." The words cut through, deeper than intended. Another pair of eyes lingered on her suitcase, then on the man holding her scarf, before turning away with quiet disapproval. Society's silent jury, always quick to sentence without knowing the trial. Her hands trembled. She tried to steady them against the suitcase handle, but the plastic felt foreign, slippery in her grip. He spoke then, voice barely rising over the rain. Some people carry more than just bags, they carry silence. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Silence was all she had carried for years, silence in rooms where her laughter didn't matter, silence at tables where her seat was only tolerated, silence when they called her the name that branded her, third wheel. The scarf fluttered in his hand like a wounded thing, red against the storm-gray world. She wanted to take it back. She wanted to snatch it from him, to reclaim it as her own. Yet her legs refused to move. Instead, she just looked at him, breathing too fast, the station spinning slightly at the edges of her vision. Around them, trains roared, announcements blurred, people pushed past. But between the two of them, everything stood unbearably still. And in that stillness, her silence cracked. Not into words, but into a single, unfinished look. The scarf hung between them, wet from the storm, heavier now than cloth should ever be. She couldn't take her eyes off it. "Why do you have that?" she whispered finally, her voice breaking against the thunder. He didn't answer at first. His gaze drifted past her, toward the departures board, as though reading something only he could see. Then slowly, he spoke. It belonged to someone, once. His thumb grazed the edge, careful, reverent. Someone who thought red meant forever. Her chest tightened. That tone, it wasn't possession. It was grief. Before she could speak, he reached into his pocket, pulling out the weathered photograph she'd glimpsed earlier. The rain had smudged its surface, but she could see it now. A girl. Smiling, scarf tied loosely around her shoulders. The same scarf. Her stomach dropped. "This was hers," he said, voice softer now. "My daughter's. She died waiting in this very station. Waiting for someone who never came." The air fractured inside her. The scarf wasn't just hers, it had always been borrowed grief, borrowed absence. She wanted to tear it from his hands, to scream that it wasn't the same, that her pain wasn't secondhand. But the photograph silenced her. And then the twist turned deeper. A digital screen above flickered, flashing job postings and ads in bright, soulless letters. Among them, one logo she knew too well. Her chest hollowed. The company she had just applied to last week. The one chance she had left to prove she wasn't disposable. He caught her staring. His eyes narrowed, as if realization struck him too. "You sent an application," he said flatly, not a question. Her throat dried. She couldn't answer. The scarf clung to his hand, the photo to his chest. The suitcase felt unbearably heavy by her side. Her father's words echoed again, travel light, but travel with purpose. But this purpose, what was it? Revenge? Survival? Or something more twisted, woven into the fabric of his grief and her silence? She stepped closer, breath uneven. She had crossed the invisible line now, into a space where she could no longer pretend it was just coincidence, just fate. This was the point where silence would either bury her or arm her. For the first time, she lifted her chin, meeting his stare without wavering. Her voice cracked, but the words came anyway, "I'm not leaving." The scarf whipped in the storm like a flag between them. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He only stepped aside, gesturing faintly. And without another thought, she dragged her suitcase forward, into the dim corridor of the station, into a room that smelled of old wood and secrecy. She didn't know what waited there. But she knew she had already chosen it. The corridor smelled of rust and old wood, a forgotten wing of the station where echoes lingered longer than footsteps. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, steady beats, like a clock counting down. She dragged her suitcase behind her, wheels scraping against cracked tiles. The scarf had slipped from his hand, and now he held it folded carefully, like an offering. "You said it was hers," she murmured, voice shaking. "Your daughter's." "Yes." His eyes never wavered. "And now, yours." Her heart jolted. "Why?" "Because you carry the same silence." The words pierced deeper than knives. Silence, her constant shadow, her curse, the thing that had marked her as the third will all these years. And now, this stranger turned it into a mirror, binding her to grief that wasn't hers. She stepped back, chest rising fast. "I don't want her place." His jaw clenched, rain dripping from his hair onto the scarf. "You already have it." The photograph slipped from his wallet, fluttering to the ground. She bent instinctively, her fingers brushing the damp paper. For a heartbeat, her reflection blurred with the girl's smile in the photo. The resemblance wasn't physical, but it was there, in the loneliness, the waiting, the hollow absence. Tears stung, but she forced them down. "I'm not her. I don't need saving." "No," he said quietly. "But you need purpose." Her father's words returned again, looping back like fate, travel light, but travel with purpose. For years, she thought it meant survival, dragging her suitcase from place to place, wearing her silence like armor. But now, here, it meant something heavier. Her fingers curled around the cracked watch in her pocket, the one frozen at 3:17. She lifted it, pressing it into his palm. "Then take this. She can have the time I lost. Not me." He stared at the broken watch, raindrops sliding across its shattered face. For the first time, his expression cracked, something between anguish and surrender. The scarf fluttered between them once more. Slowly, he tied it back around the suitcase handle, nodding it the way one ties a goodbye. "You've already chosen your road," he whispered. "And so have I." A distant announcement echoed through the corridor, "Train 07, final boarding." The same words as before, transformed now. This time, the train was hers. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She grabbed the suitcase, its weight suddenly lighter, as if the scarf no longer chained her but carried her forward. Without looking back, she walked toward the platform. Behind her, the man stood still, the broken watch glinting in his hand. He didn't follow. He didn't need to. Their roles were reversed now, he, the one left waiting, she, the one stepping into motion. The station pulsed again, the same restless heart from the beginning. But she was no longer invisible inside it. As the train roared to life, she pressed her forehead against the glass, whispering to no one and everyone at once, "Not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever." The train carried her through the night, city lights flickering past like scattered memories. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just breathed, slowly, deeply, as if learning the rhythm of her own chest for the first time. By the time she stepped off, dawn was already brushing the horizon. The streets were quiet, still damp from the storm. Every footstep echoed, but instead of loneliness, it sounded like presence, like she finally belonged to the world she was walking through. Her suitcase rolled beside her, lighter now. The red scarf still clung to its handle, though the knot had loosened. She untied it gently, folding it into her palm. For a moment she pressed it against her face, inhaling the faint trace of rain and memory. Then, without ceremony, she placed it inside the case, closing the zipper with finality. It wasn't gone. But it didn't need to follow her anymore. Hours later, in a small room she'd barely afforded, she slid the suitcase under her bed. She placed the cracked watch on the nightstand, letting the morning sun touch its broken glass. A reminder, not a chain. Sitting at the window, she whispered the words that had been echoing inside since the station. Sometimes love is not romance, it's recognition. Recognition of pain. Of silence. Of the weight two strangers can see in each other without asking for names. Her reflection in the glass looked back at her, steadier now. Not healed. Not whole. But beginning. On the street below, life unfolded in small ways, neighbors exchanging greetings, a child dragging a toy car along the pavement, a woman holding groceries too heavy for her arms. All ordinary, yet she felt something extraordinary pulse through it, the realization that even the unnoticed carried entire storms inside them. She leaned her forehead to the cool glass, closing her eyes. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space, room to begin again. The suitcase under her bed waited. The watch ticked in its own broken stillness. The scarf rested quietly, folded into shadow. None of them needed to speak anymore. She smiled faintly, not wide, not for anyone else to see. Just a small curve, like a secret pact with herself. And in that quiet, she wondered, perhaps survival was never about proving herself to those who called her the third wheel. Perhaps it was about stepping off the platform, even when the destination was unknown. The thought lingered, half light, half shadow. Not a resolution. Not an ending. Only this, maybe strength is not in holding on, but in carrying silence differently.